Good evening, Scouters. I'm Jim Lovell, a fellow Scout and also an Eagle. It's a pleasure for me to welcome you to the Black Hawk Council of the Air Camp here at Rockford, and also to help co-host this meeting with General Borling. And I want to say that I think that everything here tonight will be well received, and I hope you enjoy yourselves. I was a scout way back in the early days, early days for you anyway, the 30s. I became a Cub Scout to begin with, and then my cousin, who was an Eagle Scout, persuaded me to join Boy Scouting, and I took his advice. The very first time I went to camp, I was just a tenderfoot. I was in his camp, he was the counselor, and I proceeded to break my arm the first day I was there, much to the consternation of my mother, and put my cousin in deep trouble for a while. But anyway, that was some time ago, and in 1943 I became an Eagle, and I've always enjoyed the scouting experience because it gave me the self-confidence to further my career. As you probably know, I was an astronaut in the space program. I was commander of Apollo 13, but I had made 4 flights. And I got my initial training flying airplanes with the Navy. And my mentor there was my uncle. He was an early naval aviator, number 58. And he was the one that persuaded me to go into aviation. And through aviation, I became a test pilot, and then I became an astronaut. Now, all that career building was really due to the basis of what I learned in scouting, because I learned to be self-reliant, I learned to be industrious. I learned to do those things, to study hard so that I could afford my career. And I've never regretted it since that time. And so I would persuade you all to follow the scouting trail to Eagle. It's a very industrious experience. It's something that you will never regret. The friends you meet, the things you do will be with you forever. It's sort of a small world, as a matter of fact. Because that building that you're in right now, the hangar, was a hangar I was in several years ago. Mr. John Morgan of Pride Aircraft flew me in one of those Ukrainian jets that you see there now, and so that is also an inspiration for me to continue my flying. I still fly airplanes at my age, and I've enjoyed it for over 50 years. If you get the aviation bug, it's a very good career. It's one that I think you'll thoroughly enjoy. But the basis for getting into aviation, of course, will be to have a strong foundation, which means the scouting program through Eagle, studying to get good grades in school, to go on through college, and then get into aviation. I think you'll enjoy it very much. Perhaps a story of some of my flights would be appropriate. I think the flight that I remembered the most, other than the challenge on Apollo 13, of course, was the initial flight to the moon, Apollo 8. Apollo 8 was launched in December 21st, 1968, and was designed to go into lunar orbit on Christmas Eve. We thought it'd be very appropriate to say something on that flight on Christmas Eve around the moon for the very first time, but it was a newspaper man that came up with the idea to read from the Old Testament, the first 10 verses of Genesis, because that was the foundation of not just the Christian religion, but most of the world's religion. So on our 9th revolution of the moon, looking down at it for the very first time, 3 people just 60 miles above the surface, we read from the Old Testament. And as we came around the far side of the moon, and we could see the earth rise, and it was the most beautiful sight. The only color you could see in space was that from the earth, the blues of the oceans, the whites of the clouds, of course, and the various colors of the land areas. It was a thought and an impression that I will always remember on my experience as an astronaut. I might tell you a story about Apollo 13, or at least a fellow crew member, Jack Swikert. As you can see behind me, there's a small statue of him in his white spacesuit. The state of Colorado found out that they only had one statue in the statuary hall at the U.S. Congress. Every state is obligated, not obligated, but it can have 2 statues in statuary hall. They had a referendum in the state of Colorado, and Jack Swikert was honored to be represented in the U.S. Capitol. The statue was built. It's 7 feet tall. It was delivered to the U.S. Capitol one sunny day. When the housekeeping people of the U.S. Capitol saw that the statue, being 7 feet tall, had a white patina, the color of the spacesuit, they refused to put it into the Capitol because every statue there so far was either made out of bronze or marble, but no color to it whatsoever. The contingent in Colorado was worried about how they were going to get this statue into the Capitol building without the help of the Capitol people. At that time, 19 schoolboys came by, most of them scouts, and offered assistance. And so with these boys and the Colorado people, they moved the statue into the U.S. Capitol, put it on its pedestal. The housekeeping people of the Capitol couldn't say anything anymore, and the next day we dedicated that statue to Jack Swikert and to the in the U.S. Capitol. And that's the story of that statue behind me. There is a story going back to my scout training that I think is kind of important. People often ask me whether the crew panicked on Apollo 13 when the explosion occurred. Well, we could have bounced around the walls for about 10 minutes until we finally decided that we were still alive and breathing. But we didn't panic. And the reason was, at least for myself, is the fact that some of that basic scout training of being self-reliant and improving upon yourself that you could do things kept me to look positive and instead of negative of how we could get back home again. And so we took what we had to work with, and including the people at Mission Control, and we solved one crisis after another. And that was, of course, due to the fact that we are a well-trained team, that team foundation having coming from our early scout training. Although I'm only here in videotape, I hope that you all have a great evening. I know you're camping out tonight, having church service tomorrow, and all those of you who are interested in aviation, and I hope you all are, like I am, well, be sure you work on your aviation badge and get all the advice you can from the people around you. I'm sure that the people at Rockford will be more than happy to help you. Take care, enjoy yourselves.